The city woke up to a different kind of storm that morning, one that didn't roll in with thunder but with the buzz of notifications, flashing banners across gossip sites, and the sudden tightening of every camera lens in Atlanta. At 8:14 a.m., the county court's online portal uploaded a new filing, Rasheeda Frost vs. Kirk Frost, a civil suit demanding millions in damages for emotional distress, brand defamation, and undisclosed financial transactions that, according to her claim, had been hidden from her during their marriage. The blogs didn't even need to fabricate, the filing itself was a weapon, filled with language that painted the marriage not as a romance gone wrong, but as a calculated betrayal. Embedded within the legal jargon were moments that made readers' jaws drop, mentions of secret wire transfers, property bought in other people's names, and payments labeled only as care expenses that now, under the light of the DNA results, read like payoffs. By mid-morning, the Frost Bistro had turned into a makeshift press zone. Paparazzi idled across the street, long lenses trained on the front door. Customers came and went, pretending to browse the menu while filming TikToks for their followers, hoping to catch Rasheeda walking in. But she wasn't there. She was in her attorney's conference room, seated at the head of the table in a crisp cream blazer, her phone face down, eyes locked on the stack of exhibits in front of her. Her lawyer flipped through a binder as if conducting a symphony, pointing out which pages were already public record and which would make the blogs explode when they inevitably leaked. "This isn't about pettiness," the lawyer said quietly. "It's about establishing a pattern of deception. Once the court sees that, the damages become undeniable." Rasheeda nodded once, calm but razor-focused, like a woman who'd stopped thinking about whether she should fight and had moved fully into how she would win. Across town, Kirk was not calm. He was pacing the length of his home office, phone pressed to his ear, jaw clenched so tight the tendons stood out against his skin. "She's trying to take everything," he hissed to whoever was on the other end of the call. The voice on the line, his business manager, reminded him that the everything in question was already half gone. The DNA test had shifted public sympathy, sponsors were pulling back, and now the court could demand full access to his accounts. Kirk dropped into his chair, rubbing his temples. "They can't just look through all my sh*t like that," he muttered. But even he knew that wasn't true. The subpoena list was clear: bank statements, credit card bills, property deeds, and, the one that made his stomach turn, communications with third parties regarding financial support for minors. It was legal language for, "We want to know every child you've been paying for." Jasmine didn't find out from a lawyer. She found out from her neighbor, who knocked on her door mid-morning holding a phone with the court filing screenshot. "Girl, you see this? They naming you in here," the neighbor said, eyes wide. Jasmine took the phone, scrolling until she saw it, her name, tied to a section about undisclosed financial beneficiaries. Her chest tightened. She hadn't been ready for the first court case. This was a new battlefield entirely. Before she could even process, her own phone started lighting up, unknown numbers, blocked IDs, reporters pretending to be friends of a friend just to get a quote. She turned it off and sat on the edge of her couch, staring at the floor. Somewhere out there, Rasheeda had made a move that pulled her back into the spotlight whether she wanted it or not, and then there was Tasha K., who didn't just see opportunity, she inhaled it. Within an hour of the filing, she was live from her car, parked in what looked suspiciously like the courthouse garage. Y'all, she said into the camera, her voice dripping with the kind of glee she didn't bother to hide. "I told you this wasn't over. And now my girl Rasheeda is moving smart. We're talking damages, we're talking receipts, and we're talking about a man who thought a paternity test was the end of his problems. Baby, it's just the beginning." She tapped her nails against the steering wheel, then leaned in like she was sharing a secret. "And since I know y'all love me for this, yes, I've seen the exhibits. And no, you're not ready for Exhibit C. Let's just say, Jasmine ain't the only name in them papers." By afternoon, hashtags had turned the lawsuit into a trending event, hashtag Frost on trial, hashtag Rasheeda strikes back, hashtag another woman. News vans started lining the block where Kirk's studio was located, hoping to catch him coming or going. He tried to slip out through the back alley, hoodie pulled low, but still got caught by a freelance photographer who shouted, "What about Exhibit C?" The photo hit Twitter within minutes, Kirk mid-stride, lips pressed thin, eyes darting. And the caption war was instant. "Look at that guilty walk," one comment read. "He's calculating how broke he about to be," another added, racking up thousands of likes. That night, Rasheeda finally broke her silence, but not in the way the media expected. She posted a photo of her hand signing a document, the caption, "Simple, sometimes you don't burn bridges. You build courtrooms." No tags, no hashtags, no need. The screenshot ricocheted through fan pages, memes popping up within hours. One showed Kirk standing outside the Frost Bistro with the words, "Closed due to court order," photoshopped onto the door. Another looped Miss Charlene's old clip, "DNA don't lie, but men do," over footage of Kirk dodging paparazzi behind the scenes. Rasheeda's legal team was already drafting the first set of discovery demands, combing through years of financial records. In a quiet corner of the city, Kirk's lawyer was doing damage control, making calls to every woman they thought might be subpoenaed. And in a small apartment lit only by the glow of her phone screen, Jasmine was reading a message from an unknown number that simply said, "They know about us both. Call me before it's too late." She stared at it for a long time before setting the phone face down, wondering which truth would destroy her faster, the one she'd already lived through, or the one waiting just beyond the next court date. By the next morning, Atlanta was a city split into two camps, those who thought Rasheeda's lawsuit was the ultimate power move, and those who swore it was petty revenge wrapped in paperwork. But inside the legal world, there was no debate. This case wasn't just a headline. It was a ticking bomb that, once detonated in court, could send shockwaves through the entire Frost brand and expose years of transactions that had never been meant for public eyes. The courthouse clerk's office was already swamped with media requests for access to the filings. Reporters were calling it "Love and Hip Hop Meets Law and Order," and they weren't wrong. This wasn't going to be settled with a quiet check and a handshake. Rasheeda wanted a trial. She wanted the record to be permanent. Kirk's reaction to that reality was to go on offense, but his version of offense was sloppy. By noon, he'd booked himself a seat on a local hip-hop radio show, supposedly to promote a new music project, but everyone knew he was there to address the lawsuit. The hosts baited him from the jump, reading parts of the filing on air. He laughed it off at first, leaning back in the chair, talking about false narratives and media manipulation. But the moment they asked him about the line item, labeled monthly care payments, JW, his body stiffened. "I don't know what that is," he said too quickly, and the hosts exchanged glances. In the control room, the producer was already clipping the audio for their socials. Within hours, the clip was trending, slowed down so fans could dissect every blink and micro-expression. "That's the face of a man who just realized his lawyer ain't got him covered," one user wrote, and the comment section roared in agreement. Across town, Jasmine was facing her own storm. A letter from Rasheeda's attorney had landed in her mailbox, not just summoning her for testimony, but demanding she produce bank statements, text messages, and any correspondence with Kirk regarding financial support. She sat at her kitchen table with the letter in one hand and her phone in the other, scrolling through old messages she thought she deleted. The thing about the cloud? It never really forgets. In one thread, Kirk's name was at the top, followed by a line that made her stomach flip, "We can't have this tied to me, not after what happened with R." She didn't know if turning it over would help her or destroy her, but either way, the court was going to get it. And if she withheld it, she'd be the one facing legal consequences. Tasha K was 2 steps ahead of everyone, as usual. She'd been quiet for 24 hours, too quiet, some fans thought, until she dropped a teaser on her Instagram. A close-up shot of a manila folder, the tab labeled in black marker, Exhibit C. The caption was only 4 words, "Y'all ain't ready yet." Within minutes, the comments were chaos. Some begged her to leak it immediately. Others speculated it was connected to the mysterious second woman hinted at during her earlier live. By the time she finally went live that night, 30,000 people were watching. She sat at a desk, hair pulled back, no distractions. "I've been doing this long enough to know when a story's just messy, and when it's dangerous," she said. "This one? It's both." She slid the folder into view but didn't open it. Let's just say, if Rasheeda thought she was suing for one lie, she's about to find out there's a whole web of them. Meanwhile, Miss Charlene was sharpening her role as the unofficial public prosecutor. She called into a morning TV segment, unplanned, her voice steady but cutting. "My daughter ain't in this for revenge," she told the hosts. "She's in it for truth. And if that truth leaves a man broken alone, then maybe that's where he was headed all along." The clip was replayed all day, over B-roll of Kirk walking into his lawyer's office looking like a man heading to a funeral. Fans started using her quote as a meme, pairing it with shots of Rasheeda in business suits and heels. Behind closed doors, Kirk's legal team was in full panic mode. Every conversation felt like walking on glass. His lawyer told him the only way to avoid total financial ruin was to settle, but a settlement meant admitting to at least some of what Rasheeda claimed. Kirk slammed his hand on the desk. "I'm not giving her another dime," he barked. But even as he said it, he knew he didn't have the leverage he thought he did. The problem wasn't just Rasheeda's case. It was the possibility that once Exhibit C went public, he'd be facing more than one plaintiff. The tension broke in the most unexpected way. Late that night, an unverified account posted 3 blurry screenshots, allegedly from Exhibit C, showing a bank transfer to a woman no one in the fanbase recognized. The amounts were large, recurring, and labeled as family assistance. Within minutes, sleuths were digging through social media, connecting dots between the mystery woman and a boutique in another city. They found an old tagged photo of her and Kirk at an event, smiling too closely for it to be casual. The story spread like wildfire, and by midnight, the boutique's Instagram page had been locked down. When Rasheeda saw the screenshots, she didn't post about them. She didn't need to. Instead, she sat with her lawyer, reviewing the updated witness list. Add her, she said, tapping her manicured finger on the name the internet had just discovered. If he thought I was stopping at one, he hasn't been paying attention. Her lawyer nodded, already drafting the paperwork. Outside the office, the city buzzed with the certainty that this wasn't just a lawsuit anymore, it was the start of a trial that could take down more than just a marriage. And somewhere, in a room lit by the glow of a laptop screen, Tasha K was watching it all unfold, her hand resting on that unopened folder, knowing the moment she lifted that tab, Atlanta would never be the same. The courthouse steps had never seen a crowd like this, not for a celebrity case, not even for the last high-profile murder trial that had gripped Atlanta. The barricades weren't just for keeping fans back now. They were for keeping rival bloggers from physically shoving each other to get the best shot. Cameramen shouted over each other, news anchors rehearsed their intros into their mics, and police officers stood with arms folded, watching the sea of cell phones sway like a restless tide. Inside, the air was cooler, but it hummed with the same anticipation. Every bench in the gallery was full, podcasters with their mics hidden in their bags, gossip columnists tapping rapid notes into their phones, and a few curious strangers who'd managed to slip past the crowd outside just to say they'd been there when it happened. Rasheeda arrived first. She didn't walk into that building like someone who'd been humiliated for months, she walked in like someone about to collect. The black tailored suit was sharp enough to cut glass, the thin gold belt catching just enough light to pull every camera's eye. Her hair was pulled into the kind of bun you could balance a crown on, and her heels hit the marble floor with deliberate precision. Behind her, Miss Charlene was all in white, like the moral authority she'd cast herself as since the first DNA scandal. She kept her eyes ahead, but her lips moved in a prayer that the microphones couldn't catch. Kirk came in through the side entrance, but he wasn't invisible. Someone had tipped the press to the exact door, and flashes erupted as soon as he stepped out of the SUV. No entourage, no smile, just a stiff, tired man in a navy suit that didn't quite fit, holding a leather briefcase that looked borrowed. He didn't look at the cameras. He didn't look at the crowd. He just kept moving, muttering something to his lawyer as they disappeared into the hallway that led to Courtroom 3B. Inside, Jasmine was already seated in the witness room, sunglasses on indoors, chewing the inside of her cheek. She hadn't spoken to Kirk since the last hearing, but today, she might have to answer questions about him that would leave no space for loyalty. The bailiff called the room to order, and the judge's entrance cut through the whispers like a knife. "We are here to proceed with pretrial motions in the matter of Frost versus Frost," he began, his voice low but carrying. The first hour was all formalities, scheduling, evidence admissibility, motions to seal certain documents. But the gallery was only pretending to be bored. Everyone was waiting for one thing, the unsealing of Exhibit C. Kirk's lawyer fought it hard, arguing it was irrelevant to the current claim. Rasheeda's lawyer countered that Exhibit C established a long-term pattern of deception and undisclosed financial transfers that were directly tied to the damages sought in the suit. The judge leaned back, listening, fingers steepled. Then, with a nod to the clerk, he said, "Exhibit C will be admitted. Proceed." The moment the folder was opened, the courtroom seemed to inhale all at once. Inside were pages of bank statements, wire receipts, and, the most damaging, a notarized letter from a woman identified only as Subject A. The letter detailed a 5-year financial arrangement with Kirk, during which she claimed to have received monthly payments in exchange for her silence about a child she alleged was his. The gallery broke into a low murmur, and the judge's gavel struck the bench twice for order. Rasheeda's lawyer flipped to the next page, revealing that the payments had continued even after the first paternity scandal broke, with transfers made through an account registered under a third party's name. Kirk's jaw tightened as the lawyer read out the amounts. Each figure felt heavier than the last, and he gripped the table like he could keep the numbers from reaching the walls. Across the aisle, Rasheeda didn't flinch. She was studying him, her gaze steady, almost clinical, like she was cataloging every tell in his body language for future use. Miss Charlene's face was less controlled. She shook her head slowly, lips pressed tight, as if each page was another confirmation of what she'd been saying all along. When it was Jasmine's turn to take the stand, the tension shifted. Her walk to the witness chair was slow, deliberate, her heels clicking in the hush. She was sworn in, and then the questions began. Ms. Washington, are you aware of any other individuals receiving financial support from Mr. Frost during the period of your relationship? Her eyes flickered toward Kirk, then back to the lawyer. I know of one, she said quietly. The room stirred, but she didn't elaborate until pressed. We met once. She told me she had a daughter. And she told me she had proof. She looked down at her hands, twisting the ring on her finger. I didn't believe her at the time. I didn't want to. Kirk's lawyer tried to shake her testimony, painting her as a bitter ex with an axe to grind, but the damage was done. The judge called a brief recess, and the hallway outside the courtroom erupted into chaos. Tasha K was there, of course. Phone in hand, live stream running as she narrated the scene. Ladies and gentlemen, the street's been whispering for months, and today, the whispers walked into court and sat on the stand. Rasheeda's not just suing for what she lost. She's suing for every lie that man told, and guess what? She's getting the receipts in real time. Back inside, the second half of the day was even worse for Kirk. Rasheeda's team introduced photographic evidence, grainy but clear enough, showing Kirk and Subject A at a small birthday gathering for a little girl whose age lined up exactly with the first payment listed in Exhibit C. No one said the word daughter out loud, but the implication was deafening. Kirk leaned over to his lawyer, whispering furiously. The lawyer scribbled something on a legal pad, slid it over. Whatever it said, it made Kirk's shoulders sink. By late afternoon, the judge had heard enough to set a trial date and expand the scope of discovery to include every financial transaction Kirk had made in the past 10 years. The gallery gasped at that. 10 years meant every secret, every side deal, every dollar that had slipped under the radar. As the judge adjourned, Rasheeda gathered her files, her expression unreadable. But just before she stepped through the double doors, she glanced back at Kirk. It wasn't a look of anger. It was the look of someone who'd already won in her mind. Outside, the crowd surged. Reporters shouted questions, fans held up their phones, and somewhere in the crush, Miss Charlene's voice cut through. You can hide a lot of things in this life, but money leaves a trail. And my daughter? She's following it straight to freedom. The clip was online within minutes, set to dramatic music and racking up views by the hundreds of thousands. That night, Rasheeda didn't post a victory message. She didn't need to. Her attorney released a brief statement. We look forward to presenting the full scope of evidence at trial. Meanwhile, Kirk's team issued a defensive, vague comment about respecting the legal process that no one believed. Jasmine went silent again, her Instagram locked, her profile photo gone. But Tasha K was still talking, hinting in her latest live that she'd been contacted by yet another woman with yet another story. Atlanta, she said, leaning close to the camera, this thing's about to make Maury look like Sesame Street. And I've got front row seats. As midnight rolled in, the hashtags kept climbing. Hashtag Exhibit C, hashtag 10-year trail, hashtag Rasheeda wins. And somewhere in a quiet room, Kirk sat alone with his phone, scrolling through the wreckage of his public image, knowing that the trial ahead wasn't just about money, it was about whether he'd have anything left when the truth finished taking its piece.